What it do, Mr. Katz?
What it do, Mr. Estes?
Yeah, happy to be here. Hey, shout out to our listeners too, folks on YouTube. Just to recap, What It Do is a place where Jason Katz and I go over our week, and what we're doing is holding each other accountable and checking out our rose, our thorn, and our buffalo for the week. We'll dive into what that means. So hopefully this can be inspirational, informative for you guys. And, you know, if it is and you have questions, drop it in the comments. We're happy to talk to you. So let's kick things off. Jason, let's start with the rose. How was your week, buddy? What was the good parts of your week?
Yeah, man. So as you mentioned, you know, we're tracking and keeping ourselves accountable in building our personal brands and ultimately using that as a mechanism to build our businesses. And you know, if you look at all these like successful people who have personal brands, they always have like a thing or a couple things like mantras or like core ideologies or philosophies that they talk about, right? And it's important, I think, that we have those things and that we have things that we speak to. You know, I guess you could call them personal philosophy or business philosophy, or a lot of times it's some combination thereof. But there's always like this one or two like core thing that these people talk about that like makes them them, and they relate everything else they talk about back to this fundamental idea or this fundamental set of ideas. And
Yeah,
I spent some time this week. What's that?
I was just going to say, for example, you have like Grant Cardone, and he's the 10X guy, that kind of thing. Or like Gary V is like the kindness guy. And so I think the most impactful personal brands are able to distill their message into like one word almost, which is actually very challenging.
Yeah, something that's simple but powerful. And there's only so many words in the human dictionary, or, you know, in the English dictionary. So when you try to come up with it, it can be a little intimidating because you start looking around and like words like scale and simple and grow your business. Like, how many different ways can you say scale and grow a business? You know, so only a couple. So what you have to end up doing is, and this is the exercise I've been going through, is we've talked about this in the past, but you kind of have to like forget about what everyone else is doing, and you have to just, again, be authentic with yourself and speak authentically about what you believe and what makes you passionate and what you think you're bringing to the world and to customers and to people that are interested in your brand and the value that you provide, and really like what it means to them and what it also means to you. And through that, you come up with some things, and those become your thing. And I think it's important in that exercise of like maintaining that high degree of authenticity, because in the future, when you're out there and you're speaking passionately about things, if you are in fact going to be speaking passionately and coming across well, and I think resonating with people, it has to be authentic. And if you're trying to recreate someone else's thing or message, it's going to feel inauthentic, and it's going to be hard to flow between ideas. So it's almost like it's less important what the thing actually is, and it's just more important that it's authentic to you and authentic to the people that you're speaking to. And if you can accomplish that, you're onto something, right? Because then you can share ideas and you can relate them back to these concepts and philosophies, and you can do it in a way that's passionate and meaningful, and you'll connect with people.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So my rose is that I came up with a couple of different of these frameworks, we'll call them, and one of them is specific to business that I've used actually in other businesses that I've worked with, and it's called capability modeling. And the idea behind capability modeling, and again, this is a business philosophy, is that every business has a certain set of capabilities. And when I say capability, what I mean is the combined system of people, technology, and process, sales and marketing to work together to accomplish a specific goal for a business. And the degree to which a business is able to do those things is a measurement of its capability to deliver on that business objective. So the stages of this thing, because there's 5 stages of it, really start at the most reactive degree of capability, which really is like hardly capable at all. So if you have a goal of increasing sales, right? Are you reactively just responding to the world around you and closing deals, or is there like a proactive um, mechanism in place to go get leads and close sales? And the capability framework that I don't want to say that I created it, because I kind of recreated it off of a software development capability model, but applied it to business process and systems. Um, the idea is that as you move up the grading in capability from 1 to 5, you become more and more proactive and systematized. And as you get to the level 4 and 5, which I call optimizer and innovator, you're at a point where at a level 4 you're optimizing the business through the use of data. You have the capability to collect data on what it is that you're doing, specifically that combined system of people, process, and technology. You're able to pull data into a centralized place and use it to make decisions. And then the innovator space is like you're past optimizing. The processes are automated, and you're and self-improving, and you're free to innovate on the next iteration of what you want to do for the business. So yeah, and then before that, in the very beginning, you're firefighting, and then after you're firefighting, you're somewhat able to prevent problems because you have some degree of standard operating procedure. And then level 3, which I call, let me check my notes again. What do I call level 3? Preventer. The preventer is when you have standard operating procedure and it's all the same across the company, which allows you to prevent things that kind of can throw you a curveball, but they're not necessarily optimized. So there's inefficiency. So I kind of bounced all over the place. But it's a 5-step capability model that drives from reactive to proactive, starting from firefighter, working up to innovator, and in between is repeater level 2, preventer level 3, optimizer level 4.
Love it, man. That's amazing.
So, the other thing that's really powerful about it is, I've been thinking about this concept a lot, but like so much of what makes which makes us successful in business is our ability to identify the most essential and important thing to focus on next, and not get overwhelmed by the gravity or the size of all the things that we need to do and all the big picture things that we want to accomplish, which I think is like a huge problem for so many business owners and even companies and big companies. And what's great about this model is it not only allows you to like frame where you are as an organization and your capabilities, but there's this rule when you want to increase your capabilities. It's called the 2-point rule. And the 2-point rule says at no point in time can you jump more than 2 stages of capability. And this is super powerful because when you're at a firefighter level 1 and everything's really reactive and you want to fix it, like a lot of us, are going to naturally just go to, well, I need to be optimized and I need to have data and I need to have KPIs and dashboards and right, like I need to have systems and the jump from firefighter to optimizer is huge, right? Like that's a massive leap that could potentially take years. And while of course that's where you want to go, it doesn't necessarily tell you what to do tomorrow, right? So the 2-jump rule allows you to say no to many things and gives you some parameters as to like how far you actually can go right now. Right. And then once you know that, you can then dial it down to the tasks that you're going to do the next day or the next day, because you're not thinking about the tasks that you're going to do in 4 months or 5 months. And you've been able to eliminate those because they don't abide by the 2-point rule. So that 2-point rule is really critical.
Yeah. You know what I really like about this too is it gives operators kind of ambition, and it gives them a a path to go to, because I think also another thing that happens is if you don't see there's another level to graduate to, and that ultimately you're trying to get into this innovation space, is that you can fall in love being a firefighter, you know,
For
and there's a
sure.
lot of people in their businesses that this is what they like. They like to be the person with all the answers. And so even though they're suffering and they're struggling and they're stressed out, they're almost addicted to that feeling where, you know, they're like, oh, I'm just one step away to being able to innovate. And it's like, no, actually right now, the way this business is operating, you're going to have to optimize a couple levels before you can truly get to where you can. So there's almost a mirror placed in front of the operator that says like, here's where you are. We can see how you're operating now. Here's where you want to get to go. There's no double steps, you know? So you're going to have
Yeah,
to
for
like
sure.
change who you are here to get to the next level up.
Yeah, it's a good point, man. I mean, a lot of people find purpose in the chaos, and they feel like they're productive and their business is maybe making money, so they justify that by saying like, I need to do these things in order for this business to make money. um, but that kind of leads me real quick into the second framework, and then I'll pass it over to you. But the second framework is the transformation journey, and to your point, a lot of business owners and leaders um, find themselves in kind of what I would call the grind of growth, which is kind of the second stage of the transformation journey. In the beginning of a business, I would call it the spark of innovation, when you're deciding that you want freedom in life and you want to manage your own schedule and you don't want a boss, and that to you is fulfillment. And there's this moment of innovation where you get to decide like what this business is going to be, and it's like anything's possible. You get to be really creative, and that's fun and fulfilling because new is fulfilling naturally. And then you end up in the grind of growth, and you're making money, and you feel a sense of purpose because what you've done is actually, paying the bills, but you've lost the ability to sense that newness. And inherently, I think you lose some fulfillment, and you replace it with like duty. There's like this sense of duty to like continue to doing what you're doing. And yeah, I think that's where a lot of business owners get stuck and leaders get stuck, like you described, because they're not looking back to that stage of innovation. And it's very easy day to day when you're stuck in it for years to just forget what it felt like to innovate and to do something new when you first launched the business. So I find that for me personally, and for some leaders that are either fortunate enough or unfortunate enough to go through step 3, there's a wake-up call. And the wake-up call could be the birth of a baby, the death of a loved one, the terminal illness, a health problem, right? And the wake-up call is the thing that kind of like spawns the transition in perspective and recalibration of priorities. And that wake-up call kind of transforms into a perspective, and there's a certain degree of empowerment through this perspective, where you all of a sudden look at the business differently, and you look at
Yeah.
your role differently, right? And this is a critical moment, right? Because it opens up a whole new kind of opportunity for possibilities and achievements. And you kind of shift the lens of how you look at the business, call it like 1%, and then all of a sudden everything looks different, right? And then now there's an opportunity to reach true fulfillment, and then to give back. And that means giving back to employees, means giving back to customers, means giving back to your family, right? And you can only do this through a space of innovation. You can't do it if you're just grinding and you're the person with all the answers. So
Yeah.
that's the 5 stages of transformation. That's a little different than the business philosophy. That's more like the personal philosophy. But together, those are the 2 frameworks that I've kind of worked through with my brain coach.
Love it. Solid rose, brother.
Thank you.
My rose this week is big sales energy. I've been training account executives on sales, and we see a lot of fruits coming in the last couple of weeks, this week in particular. And so, one thing I've been really focusing on is closing. Now, I think closing a sale is the most conscientious and empathetic thing you can do for somebody. Now, there's a lot of salespeople I think that are afraid of the close because they don't want to be pushy, or they don't want to do this, or they don't want to do that. But ultimately, what they're doing if they're not closing is they're not removing doubt from the process. And what you want to give somebody, the greatest gift you can give somebody is clarity. So I've been thinking a lot about closing, and the way that I design sales pitches, which is to say, you're respectful of their time. If you've got a product that takes longer than 15 minutes to close, you got a problem. So, kind of my recipe is you always lead for who you do it for. And those personas should be aspirational a little bit to your ideal client. Then you should have a 3-step process how you deliver it. And then you're just going straight to what the commitment is on their side. Now, that is going to include the price of the service, but ultimately, that's not the commitment. The commitment is going to be their time. So you illustrate at this point, like, hey, here's how much it costs, but here's the investment that you have to do. This is where you're going. You're talking about kind of in business, you have this 5-step hierarchy of transformational process, and anything worth buying is always a transformational process. So their commitment is this is what you've got to give up. And it's always time to get to the person or thing that you need. So we've been going over that and really refining like how we can remove all doubt and close the deal in 15 minutes. Now, that doesn't mean that like you necessarily collect the check in 15 minutes. It could be a 3-month sales cycle, but it should be closed in the first 15 minutes. So that was my rose this week. Big sales energy, big closing energy, and really kind of getting intentional with all of our kind of sales processes. My thorn this week was time and email management, my friend. I need to take a big bite of what Jason Katz is cooking up, because I love the innovation space, but I also get lonely. I've done very well to operate or systematize my whole business so it can run without me. But then when it's running without me, I get paranoid that like nobody's communicating with me and I feel lonely. So I dive back in. So, when I'm looking at my calendar from the last week, I would say it's very close that I am on calls more than I'm not through every single day. I mean, it's like 10, 11 Zoom calls a day. And for me, it's too much. So, I'm kind of, and of course, this is just like the fruits of, January 1, new year, new me. Let's go. Let's get everybody on the horn. Let's get things rolling. And then you find yourself 3 weeks later where your pipe is so stacked that like you can't breathe. So a lot of that is just going to be learning how to say no, learning how to delegate, learning how to trust the team with certain conversations, and just allowing that to be. So that was my thorn. 200 emails a day, and
well, you're in luck. You're in luck, my friend.
How so?
Because my thorn is going to give you the answer to your thorn.
Let's have it, brother.
So my thorn is that my au pair didn't work out, and I'm without childcare at the moment. And my wife and I are working and taking care of a baby, and man, is that a good time. And we're sitting in the kitchen taking calls and holding a baby and putting it down and feeding it and all the milking, all the things.
Nice, man. Old school.
Old school, brother. I feel like an Eskimo, like just me, my wife, and my Eskimo kid, when I'm out there hunting salmon. But it's forced me further down a path that I've already been practicing, which is I only have enough time to focus on what's absolutely essential the very next moment, in every moment, really, right? So like I have to ask myself in every single moment what is most essential, and a huge part of landing on that is knowing what to say no to. So to your point, and not needing to say no more, I think you need to probably say no to 80% of the things you got going on in your world. I mean, I don't know what they are exactly, but my question to you would be, of those activities, right? Like we're on this brand journey and we're trying to build these things and businesses for ourselves. And my question to you is, how much of that activity is you being in a space of the thing or of the thing or very few things where you are offering maximum contribution to your journey? And how many of those things are less than maximum contribution? And I'll give you an example. I spent 2 months like working on website copy and mission statement and building AI models at one point. So I was going down this path of like, I'm going to have this cool automated consulting thing. And like, none of those things are max contributions. Like, none of those things are the things I'm the best at. Like, yeah, I can write website copy. Sure. Yeah, I could design a one-sheeter of myself. Sure. And I could do a decent enough job, but those aren't my max contributions. And anytime that I'm doing something other than my max contribution, I'm taking focus away from my max contribution, and there's an opportunity cost to what I could be delivering on my max contribution. And the reason why it's a little bit hard to do this is because in my case, and probably in your case, staying inside the four walls of where you are a max contributor and the thing that you're the best at can cost money, because you need to fill the space of the other things with people around you, right? So, for me, I had to like hire a personal brand coach to help me build kind of like the ideology of what my brand is, and hire someone to do the website, and hire someone to do video editing. And these are all things I was kind of attempting to do on my own. And like, it's kind of hard, but it is already paying off, and it's giving me a framework to say no. So, my question back to you is like, how much of those things that you are doing are you being in truly a space of max contribution, and how much of it was just like something else?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, when I'm looking at the week and it's packed like that, and I talked about this last week of my validation process. Ultimately, if I'm considering a new product, in order for me to do it, I have to go through 100 different calls, and I'm trying to get those people ultimately to talk me out of it, because time is so precious. And, maybe other founders can relate to this. You start to like gaslight yourself into some future that is totally hypothetical. You put a big bow on the future and you're like, I'm going to do that, but you just dig your head in the sand, and you never really put it out into the world. So by these validation calls, I'm able to go out there and just dissect that vision of the future into 1,000 horrible pieces. And and then you can really decide if you want to keep going. And so the one thing maybe I don't anticipate with that is, don't do that on multiple products. That's what I'm doing now. I'm spread too thin, so the time is too far. And also understanding that really the validation process isn't necessarily idea generating, it's idea peeling back. It's really like kind of it's the process of filling that dream full of holes to see out all its bare flaws and all the things that are going to be so hard about this thing you want to tackle, and then really kind of coming to terms with that. So, if I do that with one product, great. I can do that all day long, no problem. We're good. You start to add 2 or 3 different products with 2 or 3 different validation teams. That's 300 calls you got to make now. And every single
Yeah,
one of those calls,
that's crazy.
it's too much. It's too much. So I think like what you're talking about is like, how many of these things? It's like, we're really probably 2/3 of this stuff. I should just be like, no, only one product validation at a time. Just with respect to like how much, indecision and like, variability can one person handle in their brain. And the answer is, this is about my max. I was thinking about it. I was like, it's like, okay, Ryan, you're going through it a little bit. You're pushing really hard. You're working really hard. You're at a 10 out of 10. And I found myself saying like, yeah, but is there a 10.1 I can get to? And I think that's the opposite way I need to go. And maybe my challenge for next week and for the next month at large is like, how can I get myself down to a 3? Because what you're saying is really resonating with me, which is like, to be in an innovation space, you have to be a little bit respectful of the creative process. You can't be bound up with 11 phone calls in a day running through your head at night and trying to like be tactical and strategic about what the future might bring.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I would say: do less, but better.
Love it.
So you have to figure out what to say no to,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to do it relentlessly. And in the act of saying no will reveal the thing that's most critical.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also frees up the mental space and the energy to give that thing that's most critical the proper attention and creativity that it needs to manifest it into the thing that you're trying to manifest it into. Because if you're trying to go through 3 different products, excuse me,
Bless you.
and thanks. Like, I don't think any of the feedback that you're getting on 300 phone calls is going to allow you the opportunity to have space to innovate within an idea. It's just, you're just going to hear no, and then you're just going to move on.
Agreed. It doesn't provide enough room for the idea to breathe.
Yeah, and like we
it.
talked about, we talked about the compass and the map, and you got to pick up the compass and put the map down, buddy.
Yeah.
You know, and you got to listen to the trees a little bit and the wind, and slow down enough so that you can soak in that moment, and then you can lick your thumb and put it in the air and then figure out where you're going next.
100%. You really need to. And I mean, even it just comes down to like, you need the time to like clean the letters off your desk. And you know, this pace, it can be just a bit much, you know.
Yeah.
All right,
well, go
let's
have a
dive
newborn,
into...
man. That'll really force you back into the essential.
Yeah, exactly. Wait till you have teenagers, bro. Cool. Let's do Buffalo. I have a big Buffalo this week. So
Hit me.
When I'm publishing, I publish to this podcast, AI for Founders, and AI had a huge week with the release of Deepseek. So not only did we see a large language model that was able to compete with the big boys at an absolute 2 orders of magnitude less of a budget, and it also tanked the entire world's economy, 600 trillion market cap loss in one day, something insane like that. But it also exposed a couple of things that have been bugging me about the whole AI acceleration lately. So the Deepseek model is fantastic. It's great. Allegedly they only use $6 million to train their model. But what we've been kind of my apprehension with large language models in the beginning, particularly I'm looking at Sam Altman, is that they use these fear tactics of like getting everybody freaked out about what the outcome is if we don't get AGI first, so that they can create a regulatory moat around their company and then get all of the government contracts, like they're talking about that Stargate program, and delivering it to them, and using fear-mongering tactics. And it's so annoying. And what this has done, this has shown us 2 things, this DeepSeek model. One, it shows that like just putting a wrapper around a large language model is actually the viable business. Everyone's been saying that like, unless you have the compute to really compete with Gemini and OpenAI and stuff, you're vulnerable to whatever they want to do. You're vulnerable to like, if they want to go into your market segment, they can just take it for free, which is not necessarily untrue. But what DeepSeek also showed, I think they had like 10 million downloads in like 24 hours, is that it really isn't the model as much as it is the wrapper. That if you can get your AI resource in front of the right people that use it on a daily basis, it doesn't matter what's on the back end, because the back end is going to be vacillating so quickly between 6, 7, 8, 9, a dozen players, that you should be able to pull multiple APIs and never be at totally vulnerable to one LLM. And I think that's huge. The other thing that I thought was really awesome about the whole DeepSeek episode, we'll call it, is that it shows the value of small language models. Like large language models, where you're sacrificing all your data to the big tech bros in the sky, may be antiquated sooner than we think. Now, Apple is already doing this, where they're already putting, small language model on all of their devices that operate autonomously. So it's not communicating with the cloud. It's not reporting the data to Apple, allegedly. But now you're basically have a container around your data, and you can, hopefully use that with greater security. So I think that what we're going to see is we're going to see a lot of innovation in very small segments with AI, that just for very particular tasks, you can really create a strong business using AI for one very small audience. And then I think we're also going to see the rise of this small LM, where you don't need to have like your entire business uploaded into like OpenAI's chat base. Rather, you can hold that yourself for a fraction of the cost. And that's the big takeaway from DeepSeek, is that they were able to do all this and have this powerful of compute at, OpenAI's got 600 billion. Allegedly, they said they're doing it for 6 million. So basically, the value of large language models went down 99% in one day. So that's my
Well, so
buffalo
what
for
is
the week.
what is Deepseek doing? Like, help me understand a little bit more.
Deepseek is a Chinese startup that is basically just uh, a Chat GPT clone. That's it. But the reasoning is on par with 4.0 and maybe even 1.0 mini. So it basically has all the same functionality that you have from ChatGPT, only they did it with $6 million.
Yeah. So explain how. I'm trying to track the small versus the large.
How they did it? DeepSeek?
Yeah, I'm trying to track everything you just said. Some of it went over my head. I mean, I understand how LLMs work, but I'm trying to hone in here.
How they did it is up for debate. Now, as of today, OpenAI is getting really upset because they're trying to show code snippets that actually DeepSeek stole all the data, the training data from ChatGPT. But of course, ChatGPT stole all their research data from all of us. So do I feel so bad for them? Not really. I really don't. But also, how did they do it? And it might not be 6 million. They might say it might be upwards of 60 million to be able to have the chips to do the compute. Because really, what makes the large language models so expensive is all these NVIDIA chips that they have to create. And so, I don't know if you saw that, but NVIDIA lost $500 billion.
Oh yeah, believe me, I have it. My Roth IRA showed me loud and clear. So I'm
Yeah.
aware.
20% dip in 24 hours, the biggest single loss in history. Because basically what that's saying is that like, oh, maybe companies don't need 100 chips. Maybe they need two. So,
And that's
NVIDIA was
because DeepSeek trained their model more efficiently than like ChatGPT is trained.
correct. That's it exactly. So
Which in
it's
theory
like
they maybe went behind the curtain of ChatGPT and then ran it through some optimization process to train itself on on like a much more consolidated way.
yeah, and that's where it flies over my head is the actual technical how. So I think the efficiency gain is what freaked the market out so much and hopefully pulls a little of this smugness from Sam Altman. I love his product, but like his personality is starting to really grate on me. So hopefully it wipes a little bit of that smile off his face and gives a little bit more power to us lowly consumers, but also
Right on,
presents a
brother.
lot of opportunities for new businesses. So I'm following it closely. How about you, brother? What was your buffalo this week?
Dude, I think we should stop. I don't have a good buffalo, and I got to figure out how to bring buffaloes. It seems like your buffalo is current events based, although you brought like Indian tribes into the buffalo at one point. How do you come up with a buffalo when you're just sitting at home with a newborn every day? Like, is my buffalo like the fact that my kid doesn't have diarrhea anymore?
That could
Like,
be it. Yeah, I don't
I'm
know.
just trying to figure
Buffaloes,
out my buffalo source.
it's like, what's the weird? I mean, the way I look at this is like, Rose, what am I happy about? Thorn, what am I crying about? Buffalo, what the fuck? You know? And so that was what was top of mind for me as I'm watching all this deep seek stuff go down. And so that's becomes my buffalo. But yeah,
Gotcha. I mean, my buffalo is probably something along the lines of like these confirmation hearings I'm listening to, but I honestly hardly even listening to them, man. I mean, I'm either working or I'm in front of a 3 month old.
yeah, man. That's awesome. How about resources? You
So,
got resources this week?
um, oh, I forgot about resources. Resources is like books or right.
Books, movies,
Um,
podcasts, tools, anything.
yeah, I mean, I mentioned it on last week, but we'll go with Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I'm still on it. I mean, it's just it's everything, man. It's religion. It's I'm quoting it when I say do more, do less, but better, like directly out of the book.
Nice.
So
Do
if you
less but
haven't
better.
read it, read it. You don't like success doesn't have to be hard. In fact, you're probably less successful if you're doing more. It's all about less and the right thing. So just small wins, momentum. Like this is really how it's done, and this is how you live a life that's fulfilling and effortless.
All right, I'm adding it to the queue. Essentialism is going down. I'll have it completed by the time I talk to you next week.
Good.
I've got two tools that I want to make a referral to. I don't have any affiliation with these companies. I'm not being paid. I just think that they're excellent. There's one called mailreach.co, and this is to check email deliverability. Now, for my outbound sales dogs out there, or anybody who's doing like cold outreach, everybody knows that email deliverability is brutal right now. There is a war between Google Workspace, freaking Microsoft Outlook, and Apple Mail, and none of them want each other's emails getting into everybody's inbox, and it's very challenging. So basically, MailReach has a tool that checks your spam score, I think they call it, of basically seeing if your domain is cooked. So you can use your an email to show that in Outlook, in Apple Mail, in Gmail, what is the deliverability like? And this might be able to positively influence your outbound outreach. The other thing I have is personal.ai, personal AI, which is a small language model like I was talking about. They are developing probably the most sophisticated that I've seen AI agents for different roles within business. So when you're talking about actually employees in a year from now, you'll have probably half your staff will be AI agents. They're building them, and they build them without the backbone of one of these tech behemoths. So they are creating small LMs that are able to enable, specific tasks within the business. And it's really, really cool. They're very smart over there, and their service offering looks really robust. So I just want to have people check that out.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
gonna check that one out myself.
Cool. Yeah. And it's interesting because soon enough, we'll have those AI agents in Slack, and we'll have them in video. Like, we'll give them faces and personalities and voices and everything. But right now they're just kind of like in email, and it's kind of interesting. And some of them you can tell are AI, but it opens up this kind of conversation of like, what kind of disclosure are we going to need? When I have, let's just call him Ryan Jr., who's my AI agent. Do I need to disclose that Ryan Jr. is actually AI, or do I allow for the uncanny valley to hypnotize whoever it's communicating with until they find out? Now, I'm kind of the opinion that like you should probably say, hey, this is my AI Ryan Jr., because when they find out and you didn't tell them that they've been communicating with ones and zeros, they're going to hate it,
Yeah, I think you should probably disclose it.
Yeah, I agree. Tremendous, man. Any closing thoughts?
Well, good stuff. My closing thoughts is I gotta get better at the buffalo and the thorn. Your rose, thorn, and buffalo are like very pointed. Mine are like always like philosophical.
Dude, I love your rose thorns. I mean, you owe me a buffalo, but like, you're doing great. These are awesome.
All right.
Don't trash Jason's rose.
Because I listen. I compare myself to yours. I'm like, man, he's got like very pointed roses and thorns, like, and like these are like your rose took like 2 minutes. Mine took like 16.
That's right. No, it's awesome, man. I love this podcast. Thanks for doing it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Me too, brother.
Word up. If you're someone who's always trying to level up, whether it's your health, your career, or just life in general, you have to check out the Lift newsletter. This is my personal newsletter where I share stories, insights, and practical tips that are all about creating a lift in your life. We're talking about how to crush it in business, how to stay sharp mentally and physically, and find a little balance along the way. Every edition is packed with quick reads, actionable advice, and a little humor along the way. It's all designed to give you value up front and never waste your time. So head over to my website, it's ryanestes.info, click the newsletter, and subscribe today. It's free, it's fun, and who knows, maybe this is the lift you've been looking for. ryanestes.info. Now let's get back to the podcast.